The mahogany-paneled dining room of the Greenwich Country Club buzzed with conversations about market portfolios and European vacations as Connecticut's wealthiest families gathered for their annual Investment Society luncheon. I sat quietly at our reserved table, watching my family hold court about their latest acquisitions while wearing a simple navy dress that had cost more than most people's cars. The Henderson family has always understood the responsibility that comes with generational wealth, Dad was explaining to Mr. Whitmore, the club's investment committee chairman. His voice carried the authority of someone who'd never questioned his access to unlimited resources. When you inherit properly managed assets, maintaining them becomes a sacred duty. Mr. Whitmore nodded approvingly, clearly impressed by Dad's apparent financial wisdom. Your family's portfolio diversification has been remarkable. The new yacht, the Hamptons estate, all while increasing charitable giving. Impressive management. I sipped my sparkling water silently, accustomed to invisibility at these gatherings where my family showcased their supposed inherited fortune. At 28, I'd perfected the art of blending into expensive backgrounds while they discussed private equity investments, all funded by what they believed was grandfather's estate. Speaking of acquisitions, interrupted Caroline Ashworth, whose opinion shaped Greenwich society, I saw your beautiful new yacht at the harbor. Absolutely stunning. Dad's chest swelled with pride as he adjusted his Patek Philippe watch. The fortune's legacy represents the Henderson commitment to quality. When you have the resources, you invest wisely. The irony was breathtaking. The $3 million yacht he described as wise investment had been purchased with money from what he thought was grandfather's trust fund. Money that actually came from my cryptocurrency portfolio and tech investments. Poor Melissa can barely afford her apartment rent, my sister Victoria said with mock sympathy, glancing at me with condescending concern. She works some little consulting job that doesn't even cover basic expenses. Nothing approaching our family's standards. The comment stung as intended, emphasizing my supposed financial inferiority while highlighting their generous inclusion of their struggling relative. What they didn't know was that my little consulting job involved managing a $40 million investment fund. She can't afford the country club, Dad added with paternal disappointment. We help her when we can, but she simply doesn't have access to the Henderson family resources. The Henderson family resources he referenced were actually quarterly distributions from my investment accounts, carefully disguised as grandfather's estate payments to maintain their financial fiction. Don't be unkind, Mom chided gently, her diamond bracelet catching light as she gestured dismissively. Melissa does her best with her limitations. Not everyone inherits the family business acumen. What made their performance remarkable was how completely they'd convinced themselves that grandfather's estate had transformed them from middle-class professionals into multimillionaire socialites. They'd spent 3 years living off my wealth while creating elaborate stories about inherited wisdom. Tomorrow's meeting with my private banker would clarify exactly where their inherited wealth had originated. The luncheon continued with familiar rhythms. Established families comparing investment strategies while planning acquisitions. My family moved through conversations like seasoned financiers, accepting praise for their apparent business acumen and generous philanthropy. The Henderson family represents exactly what we value in membership, announced the club president. Their combination of inherited wisdom and charitable giving exemplifies our community's highest standards. The applause was enthusiastic as Dad acknowledged recognition for charitable contributions totaling over $1 million annually, donations from my investment returns, though he'd convinced himself they represented wise estate management. Over the following weeks, their spending accelerated to oligarch levels. A second home in Aspen, custom Cartier jewelry, a Metropolitan Opera box and exclusive club memberships. Every expense justified as appropriate stewardship of their inherited fortune. We need to expand the wine collection, Mom announced during dinner, reviewing auction catalogs featuring bottles worth more than luxury cars. The Bordeaux auction has several lots that would complement grandfather's existing selections. Excellent thinking, Dad agreed, examining vintage listings with unlimited confidence. Quality wine is both investment and legacy preservation. Victoria nodded enthusiastically, planning her own acquisitions. I've been thinking about that Tribeca penthouse. The market timing seems perfect for expanding our property holdings. The $8 million penthouse she desired would be funded by the trust fund that existed only in their imagination. What about Melissa? Victoria asked with false concern. Should we help her find something better than that tiny studio? Her consulting work doesn't generate enough for proper housing. We'll consider it, Mom replied with maternal condescension. But she needs to demonstrate more appreciation for family support first. The cognitive dissonance was becoming mathematically impossible. They needed explanations for accessing grandfather's estate, but their spending had exceeded any reasonable inheritance within months. The legal team suggests restructuring the trust for tax efficiency, Dad explained to golf partners, discussing estate planning for assets that never existed. Generational wealth requires sophisticated management. Their delusions were dangerous. They'd begun making financial commitments based on future inheritance distributions they assumed would continue indefinitely. Yacht payments, property mortgages, investment obligations, all structured around money they thought belonged to them by birthright. Tomorrow's surprise visit from my private banker would provide education about the difference between inherited wealth and earned returns. The private meeting room at Goldman Sachs commanded respect with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan's financial district. Richard Morrison, my private banker for 5 years, had managed portfolios for the world's wealthiest individuals. Thank you for attending this estate planning consultation, Morrison began, arranging documents across the polished table. We need to discuss important changes to the Henderson family financial structure. I'd convinced my family this was a routine inheritance optimization meeting to improve trust fund distributions. They'd arrived expecting to discuss increased access to grandfather's wealth. Our analysis has revealed significant irregularities, Morrison continued, activating his presentation. The Henderson family has been operating under assumptions about inherited assets that require immediate clarification. Charts appeared showing their spending patterns. Millions in yacht payments, real estate purchases, luxury acquisitions supposedly from grandfather's estate. According to our records, Mr. Henderson's father left an estate valued at approximately $400,000, Morrison explained with professional precision. However, this family has accessed over $12 million during the same period. The numbers hung like accusations, each figure representing spending that exceeded any possible inheritance by thousands of %. Our investigation reveals that every dollar has originated from investment accounts controlled by Ms. Melissa Henderson, Morrison said, advancing to documentation that would destroy their fantasy. New documents flooded the screen: cryptocurrency transactions, venture capital returns, hedge fund profits. 3 years of my financial success traced with banking precision. Ms. Henderson's investment portfolio has generated over $40 million through cryptocurrency trading, tech startup investments, and private equity deals. She has been funding your entire lifestyle while allowing you to believe the money came from inherited wealth. The silence was deafening as they confronted undeniable evidence. The quarterly payments averaging $800,000 each were structured as loans against future inheritance. However, no such inheritance exists, and the loans now total over $9 million. Morrison addressed my family with the authority of someone managing billions in client assets. Ms. Henderson has been your sole source of wealth for 3 years. Without her success, you would face immediate bankruptcy. Dad's face had gone ashen. That's impossible. Melissa works some small consulting job. Mr. Henderson, your daughter manages one of the most successful private investment funds in New York. Her consulting work has generated returns exceeding most institutional investors. The truth was finally exposed with banking authority behind every revelation. The aftermath was immediate and devastating. Within hours, my family's 3-year fantasy collapsed. I called the loans, demanding repayment of $9 million they couldn't return. The yacht was repossessed within a week. The Hamptons estate went into foreclosure without my transfers. Victoria's penthouse dream evaporated along with access to funds she'd never owned. Country club memberships lapsed when fees couldn't be paid. The wine collection was auctioned to cover debts, though proceeds barely scratched their obligations. Dad's confidence as financial advisor crumbled when clients learned his wealth was fiction. Mom's social standing evaporated with her inability to maintain charitable giving that had impressed Greenwich society. Victoria's engagement to a hedge fund manager ended when background investigation revealed Henderson inheritance consisted entirely of unpaid loans to a sister they dismissed as unsuccessful. They attempted reconciliation with desperate appeals about family loyalty and misunderstood arrangements. But I'd learned that respect emerging only after wealth revelation isn't genuine. It's panic disguised as affection. My investment portfolio continues generating returns through legitimate market analysis. My actual charitable giving supports financial literacy education. Philanthropy funded by earned success rather than borrowed wealth. 6 months later, they still send occasional messages requesting assistance to avoid bankruptcy. But the dynamic has changed. They can no longer dismiss my achievements while benefiting from my success. The loan documents sit framed in my home office. Reminders that family respect built on hidden wealth isn't respect at all. True success comes from intelligence and strategy, not inherited fantasy. Sometimes the most important investment is in your own independence from people who only value your money while dismissing your accomplishments.